started.
Okay. So welcome everybody to the Educators World Education Broadcast. This is a second program, and we have a great speaker up with us today, Mr. Ankit Buptani. And if you have any queries, as stated in the before video, also you can email me or the organization, or you can drop your questions below in the comment section, and we will answer all your queries. So, as about the program, it's about spreading awareness and educating the world about different topics that are making a rise in today's world, and different topics that are not discussed too much today in the world. So, it's time to welcome our guest, who is Mr. Ankit Buptani, a gay rights activist, the founder of Queen Hindu Alliance, and a speaker at United Nations. Mr. Ankit Buptani is a gay rights activist from India and is a founder of Queen Hindu Alliance. He is awarded as a top global youth leader by the World HRD Congress. He has also been a speaker at various other national and international forums, including the United Nations itself. And he is also a corporate social responsibility professional with years of experience in diversity and inclusion space. There's a lot more that we can speak of him, that I can speak of him, but time is limited for me, and I would like to hand over the floor to him so that we could discuss about our educational topic for the day, which is the developing digital era and human rights. And now I would like to hand over the floor to you, sir. Thank you.
So yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such a great honor and privilege to be at this platform and share some of my understanding based on my experience and thoughts on the topic of developing human rights in digital era. So for next 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes, I'll be giving a brief introduction on this topic, and then we can move towards the more interesting part, and that is the question and answer. So let's understand what human rights is, and then we'll come to the digital era. The human rights basically means that we as humanity collectively understand that no matter where we are living, in which part of the world we are living in, these are basic rights or living condition which we all are equally entitled to, irrespective of our nationality, skin of our color, our educational background, our economical condition, our religious affiliations, our political affiliations, and so on and so forth. All of this can be diverse, and yet these some set of rights are universal in nature, which all human beings, even if you are a president of a country or you are convicted criminal inside a jail, you deserve these rights, and because you are a living human being. And based on that, the rights we as a human community, human society acknowledge are called as human rights. Now, there are diverse set of human rights, and which has been evolving over a period of time. Conversation of global human rights cannot be completed if we don't talk about the United Nations human rights adoption, which took place over 70 years ago, wherein we as humanity came together at the UN platform and said, hey, listen, we can have our own political differences, we can have disputes on security, on environment, and so on and so forth. But we as a global community agree that we will give this set of rights to each and every citizen of our home country, and these are called, this agreement is called as Global Declaration of Human Rights, which was instrumented by United Nations, which was a historic step in a way, because never before in history, and if we look back to a little bit in past from the date it was announced, world has already gone through world wars. world had already seen what a war can bring to humanity and how devastating it could be if we do not negotiate with peace and in a conversation of finding solution without using a bullet. We had already seen the negative impact of the war, and we came together and decided that, hey, enough is enough. We will continue of all our fights, because even after that the wars did not stop. As we are recording right now, we know what is the current situation at the Ukraine border, at Crimea, and then Russian borders right now, correct? So the war have not stopped, but at the same time we yet question ourselves when we do not fulfill the promises we as a nation, we as humanity have given at United Nations Human Rights Council and adopted the Human Rights Code of Conduct, which all of us have agreed upon. Now, let's come to the second part of our conversation. These are the set of human rights. We are not going much of a detail of it because we have a limited amount of time, and this is something very simple, Googleable information, right? So rather than spending more time in which are the rights which are consumed by all humanity, irrespective of what differences, is something I'll leave it to your wise audience to Google. But let's come to the second part, and which is very interesting. And I like you added this element in the topic itself, and that is the conversation of in the digital age, in the digital rights. Right. So, definition of human rights and people who question these human rights. The how do we question them based on the commitment they made have been changing over a period of time. So first of all, what is a global standard? The very first one we can talk about is the Universal Periodic Review. Now, what is which in the short it's called as UPR. What is Universal Periodic Review or UPR? Is that all 193 plus countries which are a member of General Assembly at United Nations undergo between every 4 to 5 years their human rights standard, right? So any country can question any other country based on their human rights track record when they are due for the Universal Periodic Review. Each country goes through this review within 4 to 5 years of cycle, all 193 member nations of the UN. And then once the report is generated, the country can accept the report, reject the report. They can, for each point, they can accept the point, reject the point, or say that we would like to work more on this topic, or we do not agree to this point and at this time, at this juncture, right? So these are the global standard of questioning human rights from the UPR review using United Nations mechanism. But apart from that, when we talk about the digital age, we can see that the digital platforms, especially the advent of social media, has been used tremendously in questioning the authority when they do not meet the high standard of human rights which they have promised to the global community. So we have seen that being practiced in Afghanistan. We have seen that practiced in Yemen. We have seen that practiced in Pakistan. We have seen that practiced in Bangladesh in the very recent past. And how can we forget it is still being practiced in Myanmar, correct? So we see the citizens themselves without any kind of a political affiliation come out and question their authority and make the global community aware of the human rights violations happening in their home country or in their community. And that's a very interesting perspective. Never before this, we have seen the use of any technology being used to question the authority on human rights. So that is something which we could welcome. However, we also need to understand, so when we use this tool to question the authority, this tool can also be misused. So we have seen that kind of scenarios as well, wherein I would not name countries here, but we have seen the riots taking place because of the false information. We have seen a particular community being targeted because of the advent of social media and digital technology and calling out a human rights violation done by some other community on them. And most of the time these are fake news, but a community gets charged because they think that they are oppressed and they need to fight back, right? So violence can take place, riots can take place, community enmity can take place, the homeland security comes into the question in a country where it happens. So there are negative side effects of this tool as well, because the fact check itself is so minimal currently, in compared to its need, in compared to the amount of fake news and fact propagation in the name of human rights using digital technology is being propagated. Correct. So summarizing this concept, and then we can go towards the question answer, I would say that, hey, as an optimistic person, I see that in 2022, we have come a far way from where we started. The history of modern human rights starts from the World War. From that point to today in 2022, we have come so far that we as a community, global community of humanity, have agreed on something decades ago, that these are our rights and we will fulfill them. At the same time, we have global mechanisms in place, as I have given example of Universal Periodic Review, that questions the authority who do not fulfill their standards. At the same time, we as a common citizens who may not have a much power in this mechanism or contribution in this mechanism to question authority can still question the authorities who are supposed to protect these rights, and if they are not fulfilling their commitment to this global human rights standard. But when we say all this, we need to be cautious of where that piece of information coming from. Is there any political motive behind that, and is it being used to create unrest within your community? With this, I'll end my opening remarks and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, so much for your very informative discussion about the topic at hand today. I've got some questions at my hand, which I would like to go ahead. With the freedom of expression violations in the digitalization era, which was noted most of the times in the questions that I collected.
Right. So freedom of expression is a two-way conversation. It cannot be one way. So freedom of expression is a very delicate topic, and each country interprets it in different way. So for me to say ABC thing in a particular country would be fine, wherein if I say the same thing in another country, I may be put behind the bars, right? So it's so diverse, and there are no global standard of freedom of expression. So depending on your country, how far you can push the envelope, depending on that. But at the same time, I would say that we should never give up on pushing the envelope. Freedom of expression is a critical human right for blossoming of our humanity, because till the time we don't express, we will not be able to welcoming the new ideas. We will not be able to grow. We will not be able to contribute towards the society. So freedom of expression is crucial. At the same time, it cannot be misused, and that needs to be put in the check. We can question our governments, we can question our authorities, that's all perfectly fine. But at the same time, in the name of freedom of expression, if we are deliberately trying to hurt somebody's feeling, it could be a community feeling or a sentiment of a particular community, that is really not good. So it's a two-way street. Can be used, must be used, should promote it to be used, but with some sort of caution.
Okay, so I think that question was greatly answered. And then one of the next questions was what interventions and activities are conducted to foster and protect human rights and fundamental freedom online?
So there are many activities are being conducted. So I don't know from which country this question is coming from, but I would say that look out for the civil society organizations active in the area of human rights in your home country, and you can engage with them. Secondly, each country would be doing various activities celebrating International Day of Human Rights. You can participate in those activities. Various embassies, especially of the progressive Western countries, would be doing various activities in your home country. You can check out the social media accounts to participate in those conversations. Apart from that, there are non-registered civil society groups, or a support system in many countries. So you can look out for them. And if all of these things are yet not available or accessible to you, you can look out for the people who are advocating for equality, who are advocating for human rights. Follow them and learn from them how they have engaged, started the conversation of human rights in their own country, in their home community. You can learn and get inspired by their story and start something of your own. Why not?
Okay, sir. Regarding some of the questions that came up, there was the common topic that came was regarding the LGBTQ rights in this from the past decade and up till today. So I would like to hear a little bit about you on the topic.
Yeah, so if we look at the past decade, I feel that in last 10 years, we have come very far from where we started. And fortunately, it is mostly on a macro level positive than the negative. So today we see that there are over only 14 countries where it can be considered as a crime equals to capital punishment if you happens to be queer or practicing LGBT community member. Wherein if we look at when we started, there were over 30 countries just a few years ago, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, to till now in 2022, and we're sitting. So drastic decline in the number of capital punishment in a number of countries where it is considered as a capital punishment to be queer. Right, so that's a positive change. Secondly, we could also see that many countries are changing their laws and policy to accommodate anti-discrimination acts in place, wherein nobody, irrespective of their gender identity or orientation, can be discriminated just because they are queer by any business organizations, individuals, governments, so on and so forth. Third, we are seeing many countries in last 10 years have recognized LGBT marriage, same-sex marriage, which is a wonderful news. We all have celebrated in this decade the achievement of Ireland going and voting on a referendum of marriage equality. It is much more different than a court gives you. Fighting marriage equality petitions in the court is much a safer way than doing a referendum, because we never know what a referendum is going to give you, right? When Ireland did that, again in this decade, a welcome change. Apart from that, there are many other Asian countries and around the world have got marriage equality, utilizing their courts and judicial processes in place. We have seen adoption rights given to queer people. We are seeing surrogacy rights and parenting rights given to queer people in many countries, which is a welcome change. But is everything positive in last decades? On a macro level, indeed, yes. But when you look at the micro level, in some parts and parcel, in some pockets of the world, we see that there are still challenges and there are negative steps also being taken, like many of the European countries, especially in the Eastern Europe, where we thought that we have achieved the progress in last 10 years, are going back, are amending their laws and becoming LGBT friendly. They are becoming homophobic. They are becoming transphobic. So that is something area of concern, right? We are seeing that no matter how much of like advocacy tools being employed within the some of the countries, primarily by a particular religion, they are not changing their laws. They are not making their policies inclusive. They are just not ready to listen. And we don't know what is going to happen, right? Are these tactics not practical? Are these not being successful? what else can we do? So we see that there is just no change in last 10 years in some of the countries, especially in the Middle Eastern part of the world. We see that when India decriminalized homosexuality in 2018 by a landmark judgment by Honorable Supreme Court of India, we thought it will have a positive impact in the India's neighborhood, because the law which criminalized queer people in India was brought to us by British, and same law was brought in our neighboring countries by the British itself. And we thought that when India amends this law by the Supreme Court, it will have a positive impact in the neighborhood of India as well, and they will also push towards a change in the law. Unfortunately, that did not happen, or we don't see anything like that happening in any near future. So, to summarize this answer, on a macro level, we see a tremendous amount of progress. And as an optimistic person, I see a bright future of global LGBT rights. But at the same time, there are pockets of challenges in around the world. The European pocket is quite concerning, and let's see what we will do about it.
So, sir, last question for the day I was planning for. Would like to request you to share some of your experiences for our audience, mainly in the fields of United Nations and then other works of yours.
All right. Sure, no problem. Well, United Nations has three set of people. Many times people think that what does it means to be the civil society part of United Nations, right? So people don't understand this. You and me, as a common citizen who are not diplomats, can also be part of United Nations. How? Well, there are three segments of people at the United Nations. The first one is the diplomats. A career diplomat, you represent your country, you give your civil society, so you give your civil servant examinations or whatever criteria are there in your home country, and then you are promoted as a diplomat. And if your government place you at the United Nations, you would be working within the UN system as a diplomat representing your country. That's the first set of people, the different ambassadors. The second set of people are the UN employee itself, where people working for UN system, right? The United Nations. So there are the second set of people.
Yes, sir. You're audible. Perfect.
Sorry, do you want me to repeat the whole answer, or you would be able to cut paste in between?
I think I'll be able to cut paste. I'll try my best.
All right. So the diplomats is the first type of So diplomats are the first type of people at the United Nations. Now let's talk about the second type. The second set of people are the UN employees themselves. The people who work within the UN system, their secretariat, and other official capacity for administrative work. So this is the second type of people at the UN. The third, a small one, but yet an important part of the UN, wherein you and me can come in, and that is the civil society side, right? So there are many NGOs and civil society organizations who are registered with the UN. Now you can go to your UN website, UN Human Rights website, and see which are the official registered NGOs in your country who are linked with United Nations. And then you can volunteer with them, you can participate with them, and which are the cause they are linked with. All right. If that is some cause which connects with you, when you feel passionate about, you can connect with them, and then you can start working in that area using that NGO as a platform within the UN system. So my role comes in the third part of the civil society part, wherein I help many NGOs and civil society organizations within the UN framework. It could be UN Security Council, it could be primarily it is Human Rights Council, UN Women, and so on and so forth, wherein we work in making UN system, UN policies, and therefore the global policies LGBT friendly or LGBT inclusive. So I am not officially linked or on a payroll of an NGO, but I help several of NGOs, several of civil society organizations in various capacities whenever they need me. So that's how my work area within the UN system falls in. Now, talking about some of my own personal experience working within India, I have been actively working for queer rights in India for last 10 plus years now. We have been instrument in organizing Mumbai LGBT Pride Parade along with so many other activists and organizations for which has been doing for last 10 years. Then I have traveled across the country, primarily in the 5 states, doing advocacy work against the 377 law, which was there, brought to us by British, and which criminalized LGBT identity in India. And I did this advocacy in tier 2, tier 3, and village areas where English is not so prevalent, because what I saw that in India, the conversation of LGBT was limited to English speaking urban cities, wherein the people were very limited in terms of their reach, the activists and advocates of those times. I wanted to reach out to people in general in my home country, and that's why I did that attempt. So I traveled across these 5 states in India, and it spoke in the regional languages. I did over 500 public talks. These are not organized talks. These are like random talks in a public transportation, like trains and buses, outside vegetable market, and how somebody would be selling things like in India we see a lot of street sellers, right? They would be selling two pen for 10 rupees or something like that. The same way I would hold a preamble of the Indian Constitution in one of my hand and say to the public in general on the street or in train or in bus that, hey, this is the preamble of the Constitution of India, which talks about the values such as equality, justice, liberty. But the institution, the court, which is supposed to protect my rights, has taken away my rights. And I'm here to make you aware of it. I did that in Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, the regional language of those states, to reach out to public in direct. So yeah, I mean, and apart from that, I've been helping queer community members in terms of the resources, talking to their family members if they want to talk to when when their child comes out as queer and they are not able to accept or have some questions and things like that. So I've been doing quite a lot of things in my own small way within India and around the world to make world an inclusive place.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving your most valuable time with us to educate our community. And in a way, this was an honor to have you here. And again, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm so happy that you are doing this work. Please continue. And if you need any support, or if any of your followers or listeners wants any support, they can reach out to me on my social media. It's very simple: Citizen Ankit, CITIZN, Citizen ANKIT Ankit, and I'll be happy to be the instrument of help in whichever capacity I can. Thank you so much, Jai Hind, to everyone.
It's a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.